So your Instagram reach is down and you don't know if you should leave the platform altogether. We're going to talk about all of that and more right here on the Yummy Socials podcast. All right, everybody, I'm excited to jump into this episode because it's something that's been weighing heavy on my mind for the last 2 months, and that is Instagram reach being significantly down. I don't know if you're like me, but my reach has plummeted over the last 2 to 3 months. And while I've spent a considerable amount of time trying to understand why, watching videos, reading blogs, just going to every depth of every rabbit hole that I could find on what's going on with Instagram, the short answer that I think most creators have and most experts have on why reach is down is that they don't know. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons that could be, there's a lot of different things that could be the reason why. Algorithm changes. Instagram's wants you to start using all of their features and posting photos and carousels and Instagram Reels, and definitely wants you to start using stories and all that kind of stuff. A lot more than just focusing on Reels, like so many of us have been doing for the last year. And it could be all of those reasons are the answer why your reach is down. It could be one of them. It could be none of them. The likely answer is that it's all of them and that no one has the perfect answer. But what are you going to do? Well, we're going to talk about that right now. So if you're a small independent restaurant, well, you don't have to be a small restaurant, but if you're an independent restaurant, this podcast is specifically meant for you. It's meant to help you restaurant owners, business owners, really specifically in growing your business through social media and just marketing, branding, all of those sorts of things to help propel the word about your restaurant out there to the masses. And if you're a social media manager, a content creator, I'm sure you're going to find a lot of use out of this podcast and out of these episodes. But again, I'm really targeting restaurant owners and small business owners. All right, so your reach is down and you're not really sure what to do. One thing that I would say, and it's something that I struggle with because of the dopamine hits from posting on social media, but you have to stay up to date on new features. It's really easy when Instagram reaches down to just kind of give up on the platform. And I'm doing that right now, to be completely honest with you. I'm still posting on Instagram and I'm still researching all of this. But, if I was going to get the reach that I was getting 6 months ago on Reels, I'd be posting twice a day right now. But because I'm not getting that dopamine hit, and I feel like what I'm doing isn't working, it's really easy to just not post as often as you typically would. So the first thing I would say to do is stay, until you figure it out, stay consistent with your posting. You also need to stay up to date on all the new features that Instagram is unveiling. As they release a new feature, even if it's something simple, like right now you can do layered layers in Instagram stories. So you could post a video and then have a photo background, or like you can layer different things. So the design aspect to Instagram stories has really increased. Now, I'll say this. Whenever Instagram or any social platform rolls out a new feature, they want 100% opt-in from their creators. And if you are on Instagram and you see a new feature, immediately start using it. Even if it's not perfect, if you haven't 100% figured it out, just start using that new feature because it's going to help you reach so many more people. And I've noticed that with my Instagram stories over just the last week, that my stories, when I use the new features, I'm getting twice as much reach as I typically would. So make sure you're staying up to date on all the new features that Instagram and again, any platform is rolling out. Your content has to be 100. It has to be perfect. I mean, there is no such thing as perfection, but it has to be great content. If you are going from a beautiful video that you've hired a content creator to make for you, and then you're posting kind of this wobbly, shaky, blurry photo as your next post, that's not a great strategy at all. Your content has to be great. And here's why. You are, you're a small restaurant in a small market. And, you've got 5 other restaurants in the area that do the same thing that you do. It's easy to say like, all right, that's my competition. And maybe in business in the immediate area, that's the case. But when it comes to social media, your competition is any other account that is vying for your followers' attention. So if your follower is following you and those other 5 restaurants in the area and ESPN and Barstool and Buffalo Trace Bourbon and Joe Rogan podcast, whatever the case is, you're competing with all of them for their attention. And so if they're scrolling through Instagram and they're seeing like a funny meme from Barstool and the highlights of last night's game from ESPN and a clip from the Joe Rogan podcast and bourbon, this beautiful bourbon photo from Buffalo Trace, and then your blurry, shaky, terrible video or photo, guess what they're scrolling right? That's not causing them to stop and say, hey, wait, what's this? What's ABC restaurant doing down the street? And so keep that in mind. Your competition is not your local community online. Your competition is everyone that's vying for your followers' attention. So your content has to be up to par with that stuff, with those big accounts, if you're going to still, be relevant and grab your followers' attention. All right. The other big thing that really is something new with Instagram, and I heard Gary Vaynerchuk talk about this, and it makes sense to me. I haven't dived too deeply into it, but it does make sense to me. Up until the shift in reach on Instagram, I think a lot of us, it's like, all right, if you've got X amount of followers, you're going to get X amount of views. And that's true to a certain extent, but it's changed a lot recently. I have 30,000 followers on our Instagram account, and 6 months ago, I could be almost guaranteed to reach 9,000 to 10,000 people every time I posted a reel. Today, I have no idea. I could reach 1,700 people. I could reach 15,000 people. We'll talk about later on in this episode or in a future episode why that is specifically. But the point is that follower base does not automatically dictate your reach base. And I follow a lot of food accounts from 500,000 followers to 1 million followers, and I can say the same thing is true with them. There's a popular food creator on Instagram, and she's got over 500,000 followers, and her videos typically hit into the million range. And out of the last 10 videos that she posted, I think 6 of them had only reached 20,000 people. So that's important to know for you smaller accounts, for any account, but especially you smaller accounts. Listen, if you have 2,000 followers, you can still reach 20, 30, 40,000 people with your video, millions of people with your video. It's just the content has to be key. And I'm going to tell a quick story about that. There's a coffee shop. There's a viral video going around that everyone was recreating, and it would start with when the social media manager walks into the restaurant for the day, and then the staff start hiding and trying to avoid the camera, and it was a really popular reel that was going around Instagram. Well, the coffee shop that kicked that off was this really tiny coffee shop in like Minnesota, and that video got like 20 million views. So it doesn't matter how big your account is, it always matters about the content. So if you're a restaurant and your Instagram account has been dying lately, here's some other tips that I would give you that you could start doing immediately. First thing is spend some time on a different platform. If you most likely already have a Facebook page, but if you don't, start one and spend a lot of time on Facebook. If you don't have a TikTok account, we'll talk about that in a future episode, or a YouTube account. We'll talk about those in future episodes. But spend time on other platforms. And I'm not saying to abandon Instagram, but definitely start diverting some of your attention to the other platforms to make sure you're giving those platforms love. So in the event that your Instagram account just does completely die and you're just not reaching anybody, you can shift and you have this other platform that you haven't forsaken. We just talked about it, but post killer content. Don't post bad content. That is like the death sentence for any account. You post bad content, you don't reach people online, and then it's all pointless. So make sure you're posting killer content. Make sure that you're following your customers back. We're going to talk about this more in depth in a later episode, but make sure that you're following your customers back. Instagram is going to show your content to the people that you interact with and the people that you follow. So if you're a restaurant and all you're doing is following other restaurants and commenting on their posts, that's who your content is going to reach the most. So figure out who your customer is and follow them and people that are similar to them. Build relationships with your customers. When you follow them, make sure that you're commenting on their posts, that you're liking, that you're interacting with them. That's so important. We're going to talk about this again in a future episode, but you have to build a community in person and through social media if you want to grow your business. Make sure on Instagram that you are spending a lot of your time and posting right now to Instagram stories and trying to interact with customers through direct messages, because those two factors are things that have not changed with Instagram and evaluating the popularity of an account and helping that account grow by reaching new people. So make sure you're spending, if you're on Instagram right now, don't spend all your time on your reel or on your photo or necessarily on your in feed. If I was going to say I have 6 hours a week to dedicate to my Instagram account, I would be spending 4 of those hours in my stories and in interacting with customers in DMs. And again, I said it earlier, but don't rely 100% on Instagram Reels. They're still very popular. You can still reach a ton of people with an Instagram Reel, and it's a great creative outlet, but Instagram Reels are not the be-all, end-all that they were a year ago. So should you still post them? Yes. And if you're posting 5 to 6 times a week, I would say 2 to 3 times should be, I would say 2 times should be an Instagram Reel, but don't rely on them 100% like everybody was a year ago. All right, so that's it for this episode. I hope that you got some useful information out of this and that you enjoyed this podcast. Remember, if you need help understanding any of this more in depth, if you need help creating content, you need to hire a content creator, hire a consultant, whatever the case is, I'm here to help you at Yummy Socials. You can visit online at yummysocials.com. Send me a DM on Yummy Socials on Instagram, or go give me a follow on Eat Local New York and send me an email there. It's Anthony@eatlocalnewyork.com. Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. We're going to catch you back here next week on a brand new episode of the Yummy Socials podcast.